watched this year from the High School for Science and Technology.
Hello everyone, my name is Baturay and I'm from Turkey. Today I will try to inform you about human trafficking in Turkey and specifically the tragedy of sex slaves. I have a question for you. Do you have any idea about how big is the sex trafficking market in Europe is? $100 million? $500 million? The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime claims that it's a $3 billion market annually. And unfortunately, Turkey has one of the biggest sex trafficking markets in Europe. Where do these victims come from? What do they live through? Why does Turkey have such a big market? How sex slavery is related to Turkish culture? I will do my best to answer these questions as a Turkish citizen. Firstly, such a big market requires a huge supply. In the sex trafficking market, the source originates primarily from former Soviet countries. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, some countries faced poverty, since the governments became unable to provide basic needs. Especially Ukraine and Moldova were the worst affected. In Moldova, 48.5% of the population was living below the national poverty line in 2000 and 2006. Such great destitution has increased the interest in working abroad. This provides a great opportunity for the traffickers and whet their appetite. Those traffickers tricked and deceived uneducated women in those countries and their families. They promised that they would be working as bartenders, waitresses, nurses, and make a lot of money. However, their real intention was to sell them as sex workers to the local dealers. Things haven't changed much since then. Some of you may ask, don't they know that they are going to be sold as sex workers? Why do they even trust those human traffickers? To answer these questions, we must take a closer look at their lives. They live in bad housing conditions, and some of them even cannot afford the food they need. Some of them cannot take care of their children. They think working abroad will be the opportunity for them to live more humanely. Traffickers exploit this despair. They mainly use newspaper ads to deceive these women. They offer attractive monthly salaries and to provide all the visa documents required. Then those traffickers sometimes get in touch with the victim directly. They can be neighbors, friends, even relatives. After getting the job, the story is similar for most victims. They get sold to a local dealer, and at night they are told they have to work, they refuse and struggle and are raped. Dealers usually offer the victims a chance to pay a debt to gain their freedom. This gives victims hope to get free, but unfortunately the debt is infinite, so they simply work for nothing. Some of them commit suicide, some of them die from the sexually transmitted diseases they contract, and some of them lose their lives while trying to get rid of this endless slavery. So at this point, the question is, why Turkey? For those who may not know where Turkey is situated to the south of the Black Sea, east of Bulgaria and Greece, and north of Syria and Iraq. As you may notice, it forms a bridge between Asia and Europe and is geographically close to the source countries which I mentioned before. Therefore, it is easier for traffickers to transport the victims to Turkey rather than to other countries. But it is of course not only geographical considerations that brings them here. It is also the easy access into the country due to the relaxed visa requirements, which makes it a better alternative to Western European countries which are harder to get into. The following quote is from an article on migrant sex workers from former Soviet Union in Turkey. A former sex worker says, "It was difficult to get a visa in Europe and you have to speak their language. Turkey is easier for us. They give you a visa for 30 days and moreover, it is possible to land in the state through illegal ways." Although this quote is from a sex worker who works willingly, the situation is not dissimilar for unwilling trafficking victims. Of course, the key difference is they cannot leave Turkey so easily. Since most of them are unaware that they are going to be sold as sex workers, they actually help the traffickers and lie to the customs officials to easily pass through the borders. As soon as they're in Turkey, the traffickers take their passports to prevent them from escaping. Istanbul, the biggest city in Turkey, is usually the destination point for the traffickers, but they sometimes prefer Antalya, Ankara, or Izmir, which are again big cities. Since Turkey is a wealthier country than most countries, there are lots of rich people, and some of them are willing to pay astronomical amounts of money for those trafficking victims. This large demand makes the trade profitable for most traffickers. So then those traffickers sell the girls to the local dealers. Then those local dealers, which we can call pimps, lock the girls in small rooms, take them out for the customers, and lock them up again. This cycle continues until the victim dies or is rescued by the police. The last topic I'm going to cover is how sex slavery is related to Turkish culture. In the Ottoman Empire, predecessor of Turkish Republic, prostitution was completely illegal. But slavery was legal, and rich people seemed to use this as an alternative to paid sex. And moreover, since the Ottoman Empire was not a secular country, they were using Islamic law, and in Islam, polygamy was legal. Although these reasons were decreasing prostitution, it did not completely vanish. In the big cities, especially in Istanbul, there were brothels which were ignored by the government. But after the mid-19th century, the Ottoman Empire made brothels legal and controlled them in order to fight syphilis. And after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and foundation of the secular Turkish Republic, polygamy and slavery were deemed illegal. This increased prostitution significantly. By 2007, there were 56 legal brothels in Turkey, and about 3,000 prostitutes were working in them. But it is also estimated that there are about 85,000 illegal prostitutes in Turkey, and some of them are sex slaves. In this number, male prostitutes are not included. These numbers show that the Turkish society is not unfamiliar with prostitution and sex slavery. And after 1991, the collapse of Soviet Union, lots of sex slaves were brought to Turkey, and they were seen as just normal prostitutes in society's eyes. The Turkish people called them Natashas, which is actually a name in Russian. But Natasha became the word which has the sole purpose of insulting the prostitutes and sex slaves from former Soviet countries in Turkey. And since the sex slaves were also seen as Natashas, the Turkish society didn't respond so angrily about sex slavery at first. Probably those people who were paying for these prostitutes did not even realize that they were actually sex slaves just because they see them as just a body. So for all these reasons, prostitutes and sex slaves are almost invisible. That made it really hard for police to find them. Fortunately, that was the bad news. The good news is, fortunately, sex slavery is now decreasing in Turkey. This is partly because the people in the source countries are not so naive these days and cannot be so easily tricked. Another reason is that the Turkish society is becoming more aware of the situation, and the demand for sex slaves is decreasing. There are actually organizations for helping trafficking victims in Turkey, and one of them called Şefkatler, which is loosely translated as Compassionate Organization, is based in Istanbul and predominantly funded by private donations. They use the 3rd of March, International Sex Workers' Rights Day, to increase the awareness of the Turkish public. They announced some shocking figures about the sex trade in Turkey. For example, they informed the Turkish public that there are more than 100,000 sex workers currently working in Turkey. In addition, they provide one-on-one support for the trafficking victims, including shelter, healthcare, counseling, and rehabilitation. Our contact in the organization said there are more than 2,000 sex slavery victims currently staying at their shelters, and more than 50,000 who have contacted them for help. Clearly, an organization like this is essential, but more shelters are needed. In addition to those privately founded organizations, the problem is being addressed by a higher authority. The United Nations signed a trafficking protocol and added it to the Palermo Protocol in order to fight human trafficking in 2003. Turkey, as a United Nations member, is obliged to follow this protocol. Galma Yahik from Istanbul Bilgi University says that Palermo Protocol lights the way for Turkish lawmakers to introduce the necessary laws to prevent and prohibit sex slavery in Turkey. Unfortunately, the introduction of legislation is a lengthy process, and we are still waiting. In the meantime, the Turkish police are clamping down on human trafficking at the country's borders and all around the country. They have also provided a helpline that victims can call anytime free of charge. The work of Turkish police has been recognized internationally. In an article from the English Independent newspaper, it reported that the Turkish police have an impressive success rate in finding and freeing trafficked women in brothels. In the last 6 months of 2005, the Turkish police rescued around 100 people and broke 10 trafficking networks. Interestingly, it also says 74% of the tip-offs came from the brothel customers. This shows that customers are trying to help trafficking victims, which is a good sign for Turkish society. And with all this, hopefully in the future, Turkey will stop this shame of humanity. I hope with this speech, I have made some of you more aware of the sex slavery in Turkey and what Turkish society is trying to do about it. As I have explained, we now know where these victims come from, what they live through, why they end up in Turkey, and what Turkish society is trying to do about the problem. This means that now we have a solid foundation to move on and make sure that Turkey plays its role against international fight against human trafficking. As a participant of this panel, like United Nations and like all of you, I really hope sex slavery will come to an end soon. Thank you all for listening to me.